Good evening, fellow night owls, and welcome to a midnight podcast.
Not the Midnight Podcast, merely a Midnight Podcast. Today's starting statement is I want to live forever. You want to die someday.
So
Well,
this is a sorry.
I mean, I think the first thing that makes me think of something from this starting statement is essentially that yeah, this is one of my central core beliefs. Whereas I think would you describe it as one of your core beliefs that you want to die someday? Surely not.
No, it's just we all as human beings inevitably die someday, and so it's not really a want that I want to live forever. Also, I feel like life is much more, meaningful when there is death. So yeah, what do you think about, immortality and all? Like, why do you want to live forever?
I mean, it's quite a simple deduction, really, at the end of the day, right? Look, I want to live till tomorrow, and tomorrow I will want to live to the next
Mm-hmm.
day. And so, by simple repetition, I will always want to live one more day, and so thusly, I will want to live forever. And it's just, I think that um, it's very difficult to place me into a situation where I would want to actively die. And I don't know how I feel honestly about the death gives life meaning, right? Like that's kind of like saying, man, we're having a really nice, like, I don't know, beach vacation right now. Wouldn't like surely some misery, like a shark attack would give this nice vacation meaning, right? Like,
I suppose so, but death doesn't have to be something so negative as like a death's attack or something, like a shark's attack. It's more something more natural. It's kind of like going back to our soil or origins. I suppose, in a religious sense, it's going back to God's hands and world, and we enter the spirit realm, and we go into this world of called heaven. And so some people believe that death is only a passageway and just there's another life waiting for us. So what do you think about that? Don't you think there's life beyond life?
um, I think regarding that, it's we can, religion is a can of worms that we can open later. But I will say
I
that
suppose so.
I think that it's safe to say, as I'm sure most atheists out there, night owls, if you're an atheist or not, um, I think you would agree that in afterlife, the idea of it is fairly unsubstantiated, and I
Mm.
generally regard it as one strand of, many of humanity's attempts to cope with death. There's a psychological theory, if you've heard of it, called, I think, terror management theory, which essentially posits that much of what humans believe in, culturally speaking, is an effort to deal with the fact that we must all die, and we know that we must all die. And, well,
Mhm.
the idea of the afterlife just seems to me as one evolution of that.
Well, then that specific theory refers to the fact that we must know that we all die, right? Doesn't that mean death is a great part of our life?
No. I mean, just because something is, natural, whatever that means, part of living, part of the human condition, perhaps, doesn't mean it's a desirable experience. Getting cholera or dysentery from, like, drinking unfiltered and untreated river water is natural. Being a hunter-gatherer and dying at the age of 30 and after being mauled by a lion on the savannah is natural. That doesn't mean any of that is desirable.
I suppose so. It is not a desirable outcome, and yeah, I mean, death is not a desirable outcome for any of us, especially if it's painful or if it's a, end of suffering. But for example, I don't know, like, you said you wanted to live the next day and so on. You look forward to the next day, right? Like, what about, I wanted to, well, I felt like I wanted to die sometimes. Like, when I was feeling really low. And so those time I was like, I don't want to see the daylight of tomorrow. I don't want to face the reality, the negativity of reality. So what do you think about that? Do you always face every day as a grand opening to your life, or how do you feel?
I mean, constant pain is perhaps one of the conditions under which continued life would no longer be desirable. Good God, I sound like Spock from Star Trek. I sound like a robot. But my point is that, okay, sure, if I were being tortured on the daily, then perhaps I might not want to live anymore, right? If there was essentially no chance whatsoever that I was going to escape that torture. But
Yes.
I think the situations in which that is true, where your life is a constant hell, right? And there's
Mm,
nothing like there's nothing better to do than like seek an out, which in the form of death, which leads into bigger discussions about euthanasia, so on and so forth. But I think those situations are very
yeah.
rare, right? Like sure, it seems
Like
bad in the moment, but
it's like the state of being Sisyphus, for example. You're just consistently going up and uphill with a huge ass rock with, you know, you're always doing this hard work, but in the end, you just go end up in the bottom of the hill and you're having to do that labor all over again. And, oh, what do you think about work life, for example? We both aren't working at the moment, but for example, our assessments and everything, we work, we work, we work, and we work kind of like Sisyphus, and then we fall after we get our assessments back, like our grades. It just kind of ends right there, but we had to start over and over again, do our assessments, and then we repeat that kind of cycle. And where do we even get at the end of this? Like, it's kind of like that. Like, don't you think it's a kind of a torturous cycle?
not necessarily. I think that work in and of itself can be pleasurable. I don't know about you, but believe it or not, I actually do take pleasure in my work, no matter how much I avoid it sometimes. But I think the idea of sort of progress, the feeling of advancement, of getting things done, can be quite pleasurable sometimes. Although I acknowledge that that's a
Hmm.
personality specific thing. I would argue, I think, on a broader level that sure, you might not like your work, but outside of your work, your life can be incredibly fulfilling and satisfying and worth living anyways. Like, sure, your work might not be
Hmm.
the most pleasant thing ever, but you get off work, I don't know, pick your poison, so to speak. And are you the kind of person that
Pick the
likes
poison.
a beer, for example, Mrs. Yellow, you drunkard,
Yes.
or
Hey. I like
well,
ciders, not like beer's fine, but ciders are my most favorite. Apple
same
ciders, they're the
here.
best.
I'm just saying, there are a lot of very simple, very primal, very accessible, fundamental pleasures in life, getting drunk being one of them,
That
that,
is not one of the pleasures of life. Not
well,
like doing symposium.
I'm just saying, you can have fun in life, even if you don't like your work.
I
Sure,
suppose so.
it might not be fun, might be a bit like Sisyphus. You can treat work like that. Not sure if it's the most healthy way to do it, but, you do you. And, you can get off work, have fun. Life is worth living.
I guess so. Life is worth living. Then, don't you think that coming back to our main argument, don't you think that, like the meaning of life itself, the value of life itself comes from the idea that we're going to die someday?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't know. Like, if you're describe a very pleasant experience that you generally want to prolong.
Hmm. General pleasure or experience. Well, whenever I'm traveling with my family or friends, seeing beautiful sceneries together, taking photographs, enjoying the warmth of or the coldness of the air over there, enjoying the new greeneries or blue skies that we see. I suppose those are pleasurable experiences that I want to enjoy, but those are only simple temporarily. Like, travel experiences. We can't really have those lives like forever in our life unless you're in LA or something. You got the fire there, but like, sorry. It became a bit too dark, but you still have you can't really have a blue sky every single day of your life, metaphorically and physically.
Well, I mean, sure, but do you see my point essentially that the for example, your vacation, a vacation isn't fun or pleasurable or desirable or meaningful or fulfilling because it ends, right? Like the fact that it ends is a fly in the ointment. Is this like a
Oh, there
pile of
is an
dog poo off
end.
in the distance?
I mean, whenever I'm traveling, in the first few days, I'm like, wow, this is a very nice experience. But then around the end of it, we're just like, oh, it's gonna end in 3 days. It's gonna be so sad. We gotta make the most out of it. And so we, often go out to go shop, go to adventures, go to parks, do more active stuff and enjoy our travels to the full extent. So make the most out of it. I suppose that's why we like traveling. We know it's gonna end and we thrive for these temporary experiences, and that's why I believe that we work to, have these temporary experiences of pleasure.
Perhaps, but I think that, would it not be better if your vacation didn't end?
It would be very nice, but that's practically impossible unless you're a billionaire.
Okay. Well, then are you essentially abandoning the argument that life is not worth living? Because you're making an argument from feasibility, practicality here. Not whether it's a desirable thing or not, but whether it's possible or not.
I suppose so. I mean, is it possible or not? I mean, hmm, I don't think. Okay, so if I recall the time where I used to live in California, right? It was a great experience, but I don't think I enjoyed it to the fullest extent, you know, especially in the first few months because it was kind of like I got used to it. I got used to the environment and I got used to the blue skies and the pleasures of life that I really wanted. Now I miss it, but back then I was like, oh, it's gonna be blue skies every day and it's just gonna be pleasurable every day. So I don't really find any, special, I don't really find any special feelings occurring from having a blue sky on any days, essentially. In London, for example, when I see a blue sky, I'm like, wow, today's so special. Something like that. So yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know. Feels like the pleasure is gone when there's no end to it.
I think I think that the absence of something does probably help you enjoy something, but you can you can only enjoy things if there is existence, right? Like I think that sure,
Mm,
would it be better if um I think if you were like, say, instead of dying, you're like sent to purgatory, right? Where it's just like it's everything is just bland and dull and unfun. You lose all of the joy of life, whatever joy of life may mean for you. And then, you get to have it again. Sure, maybe you could make the argument that yes, this enhances our enjoyment of, living, so on and so forth. But I think that the sort of uh well, you didn't enjoy this properly enough, so we're just going to take it away from you, and you're just not going to, have experience ever again. You're just never going to live ever again. Um, I don't know that that seems like an unoptimal thing.
Unoptimal.
It's like
That's what I'm called.
if a child has like a really nice toy, right? Sure,
Mm,
taking the toy away from the child and then returning to the child will probably help the child appreciate the toy more. But I don't think the right
mm,
approach here is just taking the toy away from the child forevermore. He's just never going to get the toy again.
mm. But that is why we keep coming back to it. I suppose that means so we can't really relive again. That's the dilemma. Death is only once, and we can never. I suppose if you live in the, well, if you believe in that, you know, what's it called? Resurrection? No, life,
Reincarnation?
living again. Reincarnation, yes. I think that was a Buddhist concept, but if you
Samsara.
believe in reincarnation, what?
Cyclical nature, essentially.
Oh yes,
A lot of things
yes,
in
that one.
Buddhism are cyclical, but reincarnation is one of them. Do go on.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we can't really repeat our life, and that's a sad part of it. It's just gonna continue. It's just kind of linear in a sense.
Fair enough, but essentially that's the core of my argument, right? That like life is desirable. I mean, unless you're, within a torturous situation with zero hope whatsoever of getting out of it. I think that I don't know. It's an argument of practicality, not an argument of desirability.
Hmm, I suppose so. And that does prove your point. Life is worth living. I suppose I agree
Even
as well. It's just
aha,
mortality-wise, we have to live, die.
I
Oh.
have won this debate. Oh, because
Well,
debates are
well, well,
inherently things
no,
to be won.
no, 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 no. I'm
I
saying
just.
that. I'm saying that, oh, because I know that like I'm gonna die when I'm in my 80s or something. I do feel like in my 20s I have to make the most out of my youth, and travel lots. That's also why I love traveling the current days, because I'm like, I'm physically capable of doing so. So yeah. And hiking and going somewhere new, exploring, just not really caring much about the time differences and jet lags, which, makes my mom and dad's back crack because they're really old. But yeah, essentially, I really like living, but I also have the concept of time behind it.
Sure, and that drive is usually a good thing, I think. Drive in general really is a good thing. But I think that I don't know, it's just like sure, I'm
Yes.
sure you can somehow have that drive without the whole death thing of just never having subjective experience ever again. Like you don't have to, you can have one without the other.
I sup- I suppose so.
Hmm.
It is a debate to be, well, contended or discussed even further. And, well, now we reached our closing time. I suppose it's time for all of us to sink into our pillows.
For the moon hangs high and the candles burn low.